Well, firstly, a big welcome to Supporting Growth in March. And today we are going to be talking about how to open the doors to your leadership. Now, quite often when I'm speaking to founders who are just beginning to grow their businesses, one of the big questions is, how do I begin in leadership? How do I know that I'm leading my business correctly? So today, I want to begin by talking about how do we open up the doors to our leadership and what is our influence as a founder. Now, of course, it's not just theory. This was a lesson learnt, as with many founders, from the hard experience that I had growing a brand in Northern Europe. And today I want to talk about a question that I'm asked quite often. And that is when growth feels heavy or like it's a burden, and it suddenly goes from this greatest idea we've ever had into a challenge where we're trying to work out whether we're actually enjoying still what we do. And a founder replies, what am I doing wrong? My first point back to them is you're probably doing nothing wrong. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. You are on a growth wave, and your business is trying to move past you, and you're holding on. So, what you're feeling with that frustration or heaviness is a signal from your business. And today, I want to talk a little bit about how you can recognize it. And most importantly, what are those initial steps that you can do as a founder to reposition you in the place that you are supposed to be? So it's all about what to do when leadership feels heavy, even when the business is doing well. And I want you for this moment to think about your business and perhaps reframe what you're feeling now into what are those signals that I hear? And where does it approach? Where does it come up? And that's what this session is all about. So let's answer that question. We always start with a question because we've come in, we've downloaded it, maybe after a busy day or just about to begin a new one. So it's really important that we ask ourselves the right questions to bring the right mindset that's going to ensure that we get the most out of these 30 minutes. And the question I want to begin with is how I started the introduction to this session, which is, where does leadership feel heaviest right now? 4 options. Well, 4 of the most common reasons. Is it in decision making? Is it that everything's rooting back for you and you keep getting interrupted in the day by things that you consider going, surely I don't have to be doing this? Is it the team? Are you surrounded by great people, but it doesn't seem to flow? And again, capable people, but still using you as a safety net, as a validation when you think, really? I'm not really sure that you need that validation. And again, to keep interrupting your founder flow and leadership. Is it time? You know what matters, but you never quite reach that time to do it, to look at that future, and you're still stuck in the operations of today. Or is it 4th, the energy? So you know what the right things are doing, your right things are there, but when you do them, it seems to sort of cost more than it should, and sometimes give you no return at all. I want us to think about those questions. Think about the last week, the last month, where leadership feels the most frustrating. The thing that you think, I don't need to be doing this anymore, or I wish I had more time. Have a think, note it down, because we're going to come to that point. And the whole objective of today is to reframe how we think about what we're feeling. Because what we're feeling are the signals. Our business is trying to tell us something. And that's what we need to understand and discover. And most importantly, understand what that process is for making a more seamless feel of growth. And this experience, well, as much as it's theory, actually comes from my experience, my learning. And as most founders know, the hardest learning, but the most beneficial, is when you are opening your business and something doesn't quite go to plan. This came from when I was scaling Specsavers in the Netherlands. Listen, the business was in a strong position, purpose super clear, team were amazing. And to a certain extent, the numbers were working. But we were in a recession. It should have been flying. And it really did feel like hard work. The decision came back to me. My to-do list was burdenous. And I thought, well, if this is what feeling at the top feels like, not only is it lonely as they state, but it's full of things that I don't think should have ever been there. And understanding this, you know, really was important because at the time I was trying to solve it by pushing harder, thinking it would ease, doing more until that 80 hours a week was starting to peak and drain my energy and making me question at 3 a.m. in the morning whether actually I was doing the right thing at all. But really, it's not about effort. And it certainly wasn't about strategy. It was about where I was standing in the business. Businesses grow in a series of waves, and the business in a recession had moved forward very effectively, but it couldn't get past the immature structure of the business. It moved into a new phase and I hadn't moved on. And it wasn't until I stepped back, virtually returning back to base camp to understand and to look forward what exactly the impact of that non-reposition, the misalignment of myself was having on the growth opportunity of the business. Once I understood that and learned how to reposition myself, I was standing in the right place, which meant that I could involve the whole team and create a more seamless path to growth. And just before, it's not about delegation before we think that's where we're going, because it's more complex than that. As a founder, we need a defined process to reposition ourselves in our own company. Why? Because we started it. We started taking this business model that nobody loved, well, other than us, holding it like this ugly baby, trying to persuade people to love it and to be able to help us grow it forward. It's more than the process and understanding delegation that's going to effectively bring up that baby into its new era. And most importantly, let it go. Now, I've mentioned right at the beginning that growth moves in waves. We think it's linear. We do, we move, we do, we move. But in fact, growth of businesses isn't linear. It is a series of waves with known patterns. And if we can understand those patterns, we can begin to understand how to lead them. But that's exactly what the challenge was. I'd started off with forming and survival, and these behaviors that involved the founder being in the center of everything in those initial stages that had taken us to this great position where we were looking towards establishing ground. Those behaviors no longer served where we needed to go, yet they were becoming the constraints of our growth potential. The founder stuck on the old wave, the new wave trying to get through, and me sinking in the middle. So how can we prevent that from happening to everybody that's listening to this little webinar? I'm going to talk today about the importance of 3 doors. Why? Because those 3 doors need to open up to help our leadership to ensure that we are not leading in our businesses, but we're leading with them. How do you know if you're leading in? I mean, we're all busy. Sometimes it's quite hard to look beyond the to-do list to understand where we are. Are we in or are we with? Are decisions coming back to you? Are you still at the center of everything, signing off when the team is more than capable? Very much what we were talking about at the beginning. They're waiting for you, not because they can't act, but because the space for them to act hasn't been created. We haven't given them that respectful permission yet. Your week is reactive. It's like whack-a-mole. You don't know where to turn, but it's nothing fun. It's all about solving little fires or doing little things. And you're getting pulled into the operational detail time and time again. Not because you don't trust the team, but because it's faster just to handle it yourself. Your energy is going out, but it's not coming back. Your energy in doing tasks, but it's not giving you anything back in terms of direct influence over growth. So that's what it feels like when you're in your business. Really, that heavy weight pulling up a hill. Leading with your business looks very different and it feels very different. And these 3 doors will help you take that first step to leading with. When you are with, you're fully present. You're not absent or detached. Delegation isn't about bye-bye, but you're standing with a different altitude, a different way of looking upon it. Decisions are being made by the right people, guided by your clear purpose, and not by individual job roles. Your energy is going to work to what you actually end up doing. The business is growing and it's not entirely dependent on what you personally give. And that is leading with your business. So here's what we need to understand. First of all, if you're in your business, it's not your fault. You naturally drift there because we don't transfer from this very initial phase into establishing ground. And the cost of the habit is exactly what you're feeling. And that's the sign your business is giving you. So let us begin to look at the 3 doors that we want to open. They're going to help us move ourselves effectively onto a new wave without sort of going, right, that's it. This is the new job role and I'm going to delegate. That won't work. You need something that's going to be working and leading with your business to ensure that you effectively reposition yourself for a sustainable growth future. So if you're ready, the doors, what are they? Okay, door number 1, you'll be very glad to hear it's doing what you love and loving what you do. Now, I learned this the hard way. As I said, when I had gone into my team, who were amazing, and said, something feels stuck. I was in the garden at 3 a.m. in the morning, and here I was. And their reply was, well, Judy, are you actually still doing what you love and loving what you do? My initial reaction was 75 million euros on my shoulder was, I'm not sure this is the time for a team hug. But they were exactly right. Because they weren't asking me whether I'm doing what I loved, because that was what it took to run a business. What they were asking was, am I in the right position to be able to live my skills as a founder and to position myself for where I'm going to get the most out of growing that leadership, the growth for leadership. So where am I going to position myself to maximize the growth opportunity? And where do I need to move from that's holding that growth back? Because when you can lead with your business, you've got to be clear about where you add the most value. And that's exactly what they were asking me. Now, of course, we can't all in the next 5 seconds leap to that position. But it's all about planning where that future is and what we need to let go of, what no longer serves that growth wave that we're holding on to. And understanding when we lead, when we're doing the best that we can be, what space does it leave for others to step in? It's not a question about doing what you enjoy, although that is very important for a founder. It's a question about where your presence creates this natural growth momentum, where growth happens with less friction because you're doing the work you were built to do. And that is what's meant from door one. How do you reposition yourself and make yourself redundant from that position? Every wave needs something different from the founder. And if you're not leading that new request, that is what blocks and the business is hitting you from behind. And that is what's making it feel very heavy right now. You start to be busy without impact. You start to do those to-do lists, which are just full of things you think, that's exactly why I started my own business, so I didn't have to run through these smaller tasks. Door one opens when you consciously reshape your role around your best contribution and that you begin releasing everything that's pulling you away from it. And that is a very important move. When I was asked, Julie, are you still doing what you love? Actually, as I said, it wasn't a soft question. It was a very important strategic one because what I loved and what I was generally great at building wasn't what I was spending most of my time doing. And in fact, once I could release myself, I realized I could let go of so much which no longer served and, quite frankly, was a lot of habit. So before the space I was creating by moving my right role, it gave room to step into, a new position for myself, but most importantly, enabling my team to step into theirs. And that is the structural point of door one, is where am I at my best as a founder? Don't worry how you're going to get there. Don't worry that there is still this world that needs to be solved. You're not going to walk away from it, but you're going to begin to create that image of who am I and where do I best sit as a founder? For me, it was about selling the brand to customers, to potential team members, and telling them how Specsavers could actually make such a difference to their life. That's where I needed to be. I wasn't even touching that when I was stuck in my business. So let's spend that moment. First of all, where am I at my best as a founder? That's the most important question to ask. Joy and passion are incredible attributes for a founder to keep that energy going. Keep going. So, how would you answer that? Take 5 minutes now, pause the session, you probably need to, and think of 2 moments in your business when growth felt the most natural. Not hard one, not sort of victorious, but just when those moments you were there and everything you did just felt those stars were aligned. Those moments where growth and progress came with ease. Think about those. And I want you to fill in that statement that's on the slide. When I am at my best as a founder, I am fill in blank. Pause it if you need to. And if you have more time, I want you to take that a little bit deeper. I talked about when I was giving my example about letting go of what no longer served and how putting myself in that new position, I could realize that, yeah, there were some things I had to assign and delegate. There were some things that I was just doing out of habit, rituals of the past, things that no longer served or were not necessary, things that I liked were my comfort blanket. I could let go that gave me back that time? So if you want to go deeper, have a look at your current week. Where are you spending the time that pulls you away from that sentence? You know, where are you spending that time? Where am I holding that no longer, what am I holding, sorry, that no longer belongs to me? So pause. You've got 5 minutes. And if you want to really have a look at your week and go deeper, get that second question. So that is door one, pause. And next, we're going to talk a little bit about door two. When we look at doing what you love, puts you in a position, even if you can't get there now, you can let go of what doesn't serve and plan towards repositioning yourself and making yourself redundant from your company to put yourself back. Now, as a top tip, since that moment at 3 a.m., after 10 years of holding myself onto that wave, I actually make myself redundant every 6 months. It's the healthiest way to do and ensure that I'm always in my business. It doesn't mean I pass on places to Wyseminds to other people. It may mean that I just don't do that part of it anymore. Have a think. Okay. Well, if you paused, a big welcome back. And if you're going through the knob, we're going to talk about door two. The title of door two that we want to open is called Space and Decisions. And for those of you that have done Spotlight, you'll understand my passion towards where does decision making sit in the organization. But this is all about the founder and creating that space between you and your business. Door one is about aligning yourself to your best contribution. But door two is about what happens between you and your business and how you use that space as the opportunity for growth. Even when we're reconnecting back to what we love, there is this challenge for the founder of still holding on and making ourselves the center of the business. And door two asks a very direct question. Have you created enough space between you and your business for it to grow without depending entirely on you? But I'm going to quickly define space. Space isn't being absent or going, well, I'll go away for 3 months and I'll prove, where I'm needed and where I'm not. Space is about the respectful communication and dynamics of a business between the founder and the vision, purpose, and values that brings that space for others to be the best that they can be. You are still very present. Of course, it's about what is the space that allows your team to make decisions. Space is what lets purpose guide the business when you're not in the room. And quite often, when we look at delegating, if you remember, I said right at the beginning, this isn't a process of delegation. We tend to look down our to-do list and we say, what are the things I never want to do? Well, I've got news for you. No one was ever born to do your to-do list that you didn't want to do. People connect at a higher level. They connect at a purpose, a reason of contribution. And that has to be very clear. That's the very first step to creating space between you and your business to give people that space to be the best they can be and contribute towards the common goal of vision and purpose. So this is a little bit about how you open up that door to still being present, but not just delegating tasks, giving people that space that gives them the interdependency to make choices and the right ones that you have confidence and trust in. Let's have a look. So opening it doesn't mean slipping away, as I've said, doesn't mean going and lying on a beautiful tropical island, although sometimes I'm sure we're tempted. It means deliberately creating the conditions for others to lead in it. And this requires two things. Firstly, question. Is the purpose clear enough to guide decisions, without you. Not final decisions, but just guide decisions without you. Not value statements or purpose on a wall, a living reference point that your team can actually use when deciding what to do and how to do it. How do they know that they are moving and working in that right direction towards the vision and the difference that we're trying to make with the customer? The second one is guardrails. Not control, guardrails. Clarity about where decisions sit, who owns them, and when they escalate. Without guardrails, releasing decisions just feels like it just causes founder anxiety. You can't give somebody responsibility and get them to learn through failure or feedback. Giving and delegating roles is about the guardrails, of how they take those choices and take the right ones for the customer. Not your validation, the customer, the difference that you're trying to make there. And this is super important. So first, purpose, clarity, vision. Where are you going? And secondly, the guardrails on how we take decisions and choices. It's not through right and wrong. It's about the guardrails of values and your financial story that's going to make that really happen and enable everybody to be the best that they can be. I did learn this the hard way, as you can imagine. If I had building the business around me, you can understand how people were always coming back for that last validation. I wasn't the customer. I wasn't the millions of people that we helped. Yet every decision came back to me when the decision should be made by the vision and the change that we're trying to make for the customer. And that, you can imagine how much that helped when we looked at these two questions. The business was growing around me and I needed to open that door. So space and decisions. So how do we begin that? Right, let's spend 5 minutes going back to that original question. What is one decision that should no longer be mine? So what's to think? What is one decision? It doesn't have to be the exact thing. What sort of things always come back to you? I want you to take 5 minutes and think about your current week. What is one decision that still comes back to you automatically that someone else could make if the purpose and the guardrails were clear? Now, my team always joked, so we even have to come back to you for the tea bag brand. It's not about those sorts of tasks. It's about those ones that are collective forces where you think something that you can release. Don't worry about everything now, just for one. Then write one sentence. From now on, owns this decision. That's it. One decision, one owner. Get into the habit and take one small step further, one step at a time. If you have more time, you might want to go deeper and ask yourself, how clear is your purpose? How clear are your values and your guardrails that we give team or suppliers for helping them make that decision? Does your team really understand what they're contributing towards? Do they really know that difference that you're trying to make? And what are the guardrails that that will help them be confident in the decisions and be able to explain why they're taking the choices they're doing or coming up with proposals, opportunities, or ideas? It's not about delegation. It's about clarity. And that's where door 2 actually starts to begin to open that. This door, I think, if I had to put them in a league table, was the most important door for the amazing people I was surrounded with. And it just made us have better, more maturer conversations about the direction, because we weren't spending 40, 50, 60% of the meeting getting validated for tasks that just didn't need to come back onto the table. Space and decisions. Okay, let's look at the final door we need to open. What do you celebrate. Now, this is a favorite. Um, I want us to talk about celebration. As much as I used to love going out and having these big parties, that's not what I mean by celebration in this case, although that plays a big key part of it. What you celebrate reinforces why you're there. And a lot of people mistake this because it looks like culture and about the mood, the motivation, the morale. But actually, it's not about that. It's about what you talk about. When you start a meeting, how do you begin that meeting? Do you remind everybody about why we're there, the purpose, the vision, how these objectives talk in about help the purpose and the vision that we're trying to change? What you celebrate is what you reinforce. And what you reinforce is how your team orients and travels around their working day. Now, I learned again the hard way. We celebrated under pressure. The number of record weeks, we were very revenue focused. Now, when you're revenue focused, as much as it was a bit of a laugh with everybody claiming that their task had created this record week, it was in fact when sales weren't good. In the eyes of everybody, we automatically failed. And also, people who worked in the support office, as well as people who worked sometimes in the stores, were distant from this incredible, revenue and performance success. Our objective was to unite on what we celebrated, and we created a purpose measure, very different from a goal measure. What's the purpose? Why do we exist? And how do we know why we exist is working for who we exist for? And that was for our customers. We ensured that we celebrated not the revenue of that week, we celebrated what everybody could contribute towards 1,700 people. And that was the likelihood of that customer returning in 2 years' time. We all contributed towards that. The product, the marketing, the stores, everybody did. And if you weren't contributing to that, why are you there? This began as this incredible united journey. The things that we talked about were all about uniting in our purpose measure. And boy, we did have parties. But I can tell you, 1,700 people owned that dance floor and they owned that purpose measure success for sure. Of course, you talk about the guardrails of the financial story, but that was with me and a few of the other people. The majority of people need to unite and know what they're working towards. What are you celebrating? What do you start every meeting with? Every board meeting, we laid our purpose measure on the table. And we didn't talk about it all the time, but it was there. We knew why we existed, and every day the decisions that we took for today and in the future was on our long-term purpose measure. Not goal measures, not revenue, purpose and the change that we wanted to make. Door 3 closes that loop. And when you shift what you celebrate, when purpose becomes the measure, it just becomes alive, united. And it doesn't matter what role it is, it's the contribution. It gives you the space of door 2 to enable people to do what they want to do and to be the best they can be. And it ensures that door 1 always stays open and that you're constantly repositioning yourself. Listen, my story is simple. I learnt it hard and I learnt it fast, but it did change everything. These 3 doors, when it comes to the point where you open these doors and stop obsessing over the sales numbers or this or that or the small minutiae that everything's got to be perfect and, it's got to come through this funnel, that is when that growth wave that's been hitting you on the back of the head, the one that's been trying to tell you the story for however long that's when it can pass and flow and be the growth opportunity. That's exactly where it's supposed to be. I found this out as a founder. And it didn't just help me to do things better, it helped unite the power of so many amazing people who were always there. It gave them the space to be the best that they could be as well. And it distributed leadership. It matured our business organization. And, well, we hit market leadership in that year for the first time. But you can find out a little bit more of that in Spotlight. Because when we have a look at these core actions, let's have a look at door 3. Finish that sentence. Spend those 5 minutes answering the question, are we still? Are we still with your purpose? When your business is truly aligned, are you still aligned to whatever your purpose is? That question becomes your door 3 measure. Are you still working towards what matters most, and is everybody unified? Is that what you celebrate and what you set your goals towards looking up to and making a difference? And if you still have more time, you might want to take it that little bit further forward and ask the question. If you ask that question to your team, to others, would they reply the same as you? A purpose question. Do they all know what that measure of your success is? Right. What fun. We've had a look at door 3, and now together we have the 3 doors and a line. And when we're trying to move on to that next wave, download Spotlight and find out about the 3 capabilities and the kite. But for this moment, as you step into your new leadership role, even if it's through awareness or asking yourself the different questions or feeling what that heaviness is on that next growth wave, you've now seen all 3 doors to leading a new wave of growth. Door 1, reconnecting to the best founder role. Door 2, creating the space and decision making to enable others to be the best that they can be. And door 3, shifting what you measure and celebrate. And if you can open all 3 of these doors, it starts to release the blocks that have stopped this incredible opportunity of growth of your business. Try and do it step by step. Which door feels the most urgent? Door 1, door 2, door 3. Start opening a door. They're all connected. When you open one widely, it starts to let other parts of the doors open as well. They work interdependently of each other. So have a little look at these 3 doors this week and understand that growth doesn't get stuck first. Our leadership does. And when we looked at the beginning about where growth felt heaviest, this was the question that I asked. You came into the session carrying this sort of heaviness, and we've hopefully identified where it feels heaviest. I've given you those 3 doors that you can begin to open by asking yourself different questions, not feeling burdened or feeling that growth is heavy because we are doing something wrong. We just need to open those 3 doors of leadership, even by this much. And it really does help to reposition our leadership role as a founder, especially as we're moving through those different phases. So, do more of what brings out the best in you as a founder. We need more founders growing great ideas. And that's exactly what we're trying to do at Wyseminds. Release one decision. Surround yourself by people who want that extra decision-making process and ask a different question about what truly matters and the difference that you're making. Let the wave move and let others step forward, and definitely let purpose lead. And above all, lead with your business, not in it. Have fun over the next month, and always remember, growth begins with you. Thank you for downloading this, and I hope to see you soon on the Your Journey platform.